All right, let's talk a little bit about Martin Van Buren so we can get ourselves acclimated today. Since technically it's a Monday for me since I wasn't up here yesterday. So with the new political system, they are trying to get away from aristocracy in politics to what? You remember?
So what did you just ask?
The new politics, right? The old politics went out of its way to put on airs of aristocracy. What did the new politicians want people to think about them?
They're down to earth.
That they were down to earth. That they were get-atable. Now, I love that word. Get-atable. Is that not a great word?
How do you spell that?
What, get-atable? Getable. I think. I'm pretty sure it's going to show up as a misspelling, but it's a word. So the new politicians want to be seen as get-atable or approachable. Sort of like if you have a teacher that's not approachable, are you more than likely not going to do well in that class? You know what I'm saying? And if you have a teacher that is approachable and you feel you can go talk to them and say, hey, look, my cat got run over by 4 trucks, you know, would you rather have the approachable or the unapproachable? You want the approachable. So you want the same thing in your politicians. And Martin Van Buren is going to be a new breed of this politician. Because he came from the common everyday man. His dad was a tavern keeper. Basically, he pulled a little lever and dispersed fine ales and slid them down the bar. I'm sure he owned it eventually. He's going to embrace everything that the new political system can offer. And he agrees that if you need the political parties to keep an eye on each other. He's somewhat right. Does that fall under any kind of something imbalances? Checks and balances. It's going to fall under that, and it's not really intended to. But it just kind of works out that way, so it's kind of cool that, you know, things just fall into place. The new politicians will not put on aristocratic. Anyway, they don't pretend to be aristocracy, okay? Aristocratic, that's it. They don't put on aristocratic airs, which means they don't dress beautifully like the guy, remember we talked about, lost all his pretty clothes in the river, and the guy published it and made him look silly. They're going to dress in plain clothes. Thomas Jefferson goes to his own inauguration in a wrinkled suit. He didn't have the very best hygiene habits either. So, if you're aristocracy, you're going to douse yourself with perfume so that your BO doesn't offend anybody. They're going to use common and informal language. They're going to talk to people on their level. In the South, this might sound something like, well, I ain't got no hang-ups about, fixing the prices on the backer this year. Up north, you might say, well, I see no qualms in extending the assistance programs for the industrial arena. So you're going to speak to people on their level. They're going to entertain crowds. When Andrew Jackson is inaugurated afterward, he has a big party in the White House and invites everybody. And essentially, they end up breaking out every window. Part of one of the floors collapses because there's too many people on it. Andrew Jackson himself has to be rushed out to keep from getting trampled to death. So that's about as common man as you're going to get. They're going to have parades and rallies and barbecues and just different things like that to get the public involved. If you live on a farm, what are the chances that you're going to have lots and lots of fun? Slim to none unless you sneak off to the swimming hole and go swimming after your chores are through. So if you hear that the local politician is hosting, I don't know, a barbecue and a parade or a barbecue and a dance, and he wants your vote, so you go and you say, okay, if you want my vote, feed me and dance with me. not dance with me per se. So you kind of see where that if they appeal to the common man, it will become known as the era of the common man under Jackson, for Age of the Common Man. A lot of the times these politicians will go into the local pubs or the local taverns and start a tab and say, everybody who drinks are on me. I was actually I worked at this place, and one night after work, the owner bought every one of us a drink. Drinks are on me. I didn't drink because I had to drive home, but I had a nice big tall glass of cold iced tea. It was good with me. So with Jackson, you're going to usher in something called the Age of the Common Man. So now politics does not focus on the rich people, the aristocracy. It focuses on John Smith and Henry Jones. Because aren't they the ones that make up the backbone of this new country? They're farmers, so without farmers can we eat? No, so they are the backbone. So the politicians are going to want to focus on the common man. Because it is, and don't let anybody else tell you, it is the common man that builds this country. It is still the common man that keeps this country going. Regardless of what the government tries to tell you. Only problem is it's the age of the common man. But only one kind of man. A white man. Women and slaves can't vote. Women and slaves are still property. If we go back, 2010? We go back 200 years, I wouldn't be standing here. I would be on a farm somewhere with probably 14 or 15 children. And probably slopping the pigs and feeding the chickens. Of course, it would be fun to watch the chickens fight for the food. You ever watch somebody feed chickens? I've seen it done. It's so funny. It's like they peck each other to get the food. It's weird.
And they grab it and run around the yard, too. It's really cute.
Yeah, and then on Dirty Dogs, they had these turkeys that they raised, and they had some feed in a remote control truck, and they were running it. It's the same concept. Okay, slaves aren't allowed to vote. Neither are free African American males, nor are Indians allowed to vote. When they were the first ones here, they should be the only ones that are allowed to vote because they're the only citizens. And you have a lot of avoiding the problem. For example, the new health care bill. They're finding ways to avoid having to deal with the public not liking this. It's a basic problem. Do we need some kind of a health care program for the people who don't work at places that will not provide this? Yes, we do. Do we need a medical program for children of single parents? Yes, we do. Do we need a medical program for disabled people? We kind of have that, but it needs to be worked on. So they're going to try to skirt the issues by saying this is the age of the common man. In 1825, John Quincy Adams becomes president, and he wants to create a huge party. The more people you have in your entourage, the better you look when you arrive at the award ceremony. I watched some of the, what is the one on BET? The hip-hop something, or I can't remember what it's called, but whoever had the biggest entourage when they got there got more pictures taken. So let's talk about John Quincy. He is the son of President John Adams, the first of how many father-son presidents? How many sets? Three. Who are they?
Reagan, or not Reagan, the Bushes, the Adams, and
if you have a little boy that's got a lot of hair on him. Harrison? That's new mine. So yeah, Harrison, it was William, Henry, and what was the other one? Benjamin Harrison. He was a very good diplomat. He actually served as a diplomat. He was a great Secretary of State. He did Hillary's job. But Hillary does it a lot different. He does not have any political savvy. What do I mean when I say that? No political common sense, yeah. And he doesn't know when to pucker up and when not to. He doesn't know who to give a kiss and who to not give a kiss, so to speak. Do I kiss the ugly baby? Do I kiss the pretty baby? You kiss them both if you want people to vote for you. So, yeah. Is it the one where Peter's running for students or for school board president or something? Then this woman holds up her baby and it's cute, and then this next woman holds up her baby and it's like just all icky, and he won't kiss it. He shakes his hand. Really weird. So he's a very cold and tactless man. If you had bad breath, he would walk right up to you and say, "Hello, my name's John Quincy Adams, and your breath smells really bad." So yeah, he has no tact. He shows no emotion, which is not uncommon, because men of this time were told if they show emotion, that's a sign of weakness. Is that still kind of true today? Who's supposed to be the stronger one in the relationship? The man, right? And it's just something you can't teach or unteach overnight. In 1828, Andrew Jackson and the Democrats are going to take power. Now, in the 1828 election, it's going to be one of those like we have today, where they're putting up commercials, but they won't have commercials. About when Obama was running and McCain was running, and they had that one about how I saw it on the internet, where Obama was related to terrorists or something, and then there was the whole thing, is he really a citizen or whatever. And then they're saying McCain was, voted against all these programs to help single mothers. And see, I don't watch those things because they irritate me, because neither one of them are going to do anything. Let's really think about it. Basically, this election boils down to who can personally attack the other person better and get woohoos from the people. Literally. Mudslinging, that's where you're talking smack about your opponent. This isn't professional. You should never, ever do that. This is not professional. So if you ever run for office, don't do this. Take the higher road. Jackson will win easily because he was the hero of New Orleans. What was special about that battle?
It really wasn't a battle.
Really wasn't a battle. It was just kind of beating up on some people that had already lost. So, yeah. Woohoo, big hero, yeah. So this election will set the tone for how politics was practiced then, and it's still practiced now. Do we have mudslinging now? Do we just have more sources to get it out there? Yes, we do. So now you have two parties competing for those select voters. So it's going to be a little bit of a competition. And the one thing they're going to focus on, instead of focusing on the issues, now remember we talked about how they tried to skirt the issues? This is going to be rampant during this election. They're not going to talk about the fact that, we could still be taken over by the British, that we still need to incorporate the new land. We still have problems with the Indians, according to them. They're not talking about that. They're talking about personalities. With that being said, let me tell you a little story. Once upon a time, Andrew Jackson married a lovely young lady named Rachel Jackson. That wasn't her name before, but... and this marriage was controversial. So this was going to be perfect fodder for an election. What was unique about his marriage to Rachel Jackson? Internet people, this goes for you too. On Thursday, for 2 points, bring to me why Jackson's marriage to Rachel was so controversial. And that will be worth 2 on the final. So they're focusing on personal things, character attacks. What did they say about George W. when he was running the second term. What didn't they say about him? Scary thing is, I helped put that man in office the first time. I am so sorry. I apologize for that. I really do. I had a momentary lapse in judgment. But it's fixed now. Now, people like Jackson because Jackson at one point was one of them. At one point he was for the church mouse. But he worked his way up. He was self-educated. He worked his way into being a wealthy man. So he had been one of them, and he was the epitome of what they could become if they worked hard. True or false? True. If he can do it, why can't I? He even had the fuzzy hair and everything, and my hair is smooth. So if he can do it, I can too, because I have prettier hair. No, you can see just there. Sort of like Albert Einstein, you know, with the hair, and he was probably the smartest man ever. So, but the people elect him because of who he was, how he got there, but they're still not really sure what kind of a president he's going to make. There's a few things about him that you need to know, so you can kind of get to know how he was. He's the first president from west of the Appalachian Mountains, from Tennessee. We have that distinction. He had a very controversial marriage to his wife, Rachel. I'm not going to tell you why. You're going to tell me. He had a very quick mind. What do you think that means? Did he think on his feet, you think? You think it took a man to put that thought on his feet to yell charge after the battle was over? Yeah. If we get him now, we can win. You know, that's pretty quick. He doesn't like book learning. My sister, I love her to pieces. But she's got more book smarts than she has thinking smarts. She is all for book learning. Me, I have common sense. Of course, I have book learning too. I don't know what Grandma would have called it, but he doesn't like book learning. He got the nickname Old Hickory for being a tough guy and beating up on people after the war's over. Yeah, that's tough. He was arrogant. When he walked into a room, he was the most important person there. And everybody pretty much had to agree or he would get very angry. He could be very vindictive. He could be a bully. He loved to duel. Who else do we know that liked to duel? And Aaron Burr. He was a very shrewd politician. He can manipulate people into doing anything he wanted them to do. He's sneaky.
I think I dated him.
Really?
I'm just kidding.
Maybe it was him reincarnated. You never know. And at certain times, he could be downright abusive. He's admired and he loved the public system and he relied on it. He loved it. He loved the political arena. He liked the spoils system. What's a spoils system?
Get jobs to your friends.
Right, you give jobs to your friends. He believed that the cabinet was there to carry out his will. I am your queen, you will go out as my minions. Or whatever. And he was so persistent, he usually always got his way. When he takes office, the market and the population is expanding, and he's going to have three major problems with the country growing like it was. With more and more people, is there any more land to be gotten on the eastern seacoast? No. So people need land. But to get new land, they're going to have to do something with the Indians. Second thing he's going to have to face is the economies of the North and the South becoming so polarized. What do I mean by that? Opposites, right. They're so polarized that it's going to create a huge rift, and this is going to cause a lot of problems with the tariff system. What is the South primarily working with? Agriculture. What did the North have? Industry, manufacturing, right. So, are the farmers going to make or the plantation owners and farmers going to make as much as the industrial giants? No. So there's going to be a big problem with the tariff. The third thing that he's going to have to deal with is the booming economy. Now, the problem with Jackson is that he hates the bank. He thinks that the bank is is Satan incarnate, or whichever bad guy it is, that you learn about. He does not like the bank. He wants to get rid of the bank. In 1820, you have about 125,000 Native Americans east of the Mississippi, and those are the ones. The Chickasaw and the Seminoles are going to hold land that's going to become part of the Cotton Kingdom. What's going to happen to these guys, you think? See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya. They're going to get rid of them. So the southern states want the government to make the Indians leave and give them title to their land. Racism will increase as more and more pressure will be put on the government to get rid of the Native Americans. And after 1815, now I have issues with this statement from the book. After 1815, white culture began to see other cultures as inferior and barbaric. Was it just after 1815? No. So, no. It's always been that way. Somebody has always seen some other culture as inferior and barbaric. But in our case, for the time we are right now, the Native Americans are inferior and barbaric, and so are the slaves. Now, the Cherokee have done a pretty good job of working themselves into the system, into the American way of life. They're tied to the market system. They trade on a regular basis and ship things overseas to England. Baskets, furs, things like that, hats, coats, weaving, how they do the blankets and stuff, beautiful blankets. Eventually they start splitting the land up into I own this, I own this, I own this, instead of everybody owns everything. They start developing the class structures or income levels, and you start getting the same thing that's going on in the white community. Eventually, the tribal government, which at one point was egalitarian, will be taken over by the ones that are getting more money and more power. And these are usually going to be the ones that become plantation owners. Now, a Native American plantation owner was rare, but it happened. As cotton production gets more and more in demand, slavery will become harsher. Up to this point, Native Americans would allow intermarriage between slaves and the Native American population. But as the competition gets stronger, they will pass laws forbidding intermarriage and any kind of adult contact between slaves and African Americans. Then, of course, we all know about the Trail of Tears. They were forced to leave before 1838, and they're going to resist at first, but Van Buren has them marched west at the point of bayonets and guns. So this isn't good. So 15,000 begin the trip, and about a quarter of those will die along the way. Mostly of exposure, disease, starvation, and exhaustion. It becomes known as the Trail of Tears. You have a lot of free blacks up north. These are mostly former slaves or people that bought their freedom in some way. But they are still not getting any kind of basic rights or anything like that. So Jackson will come in with the Democratic Party and promote certain things. And it's not that progressive a party. When you talk about progressives in the second half, it's not really that progressive either. He promotes white equality. Does it say just equality? white equality, but only white men. He is very pro-slavery. He's a slave owner. Why wouldn't he be? He has about 100 slaves. And he does not want to give any rights to the African Americans, free African Americans. Why not? You ever heard that old adage, give them an inch and they'll take a mile? Yeah, exactly. In the pre-Civil War United States, there was a free black population. There was about 171,000 free blacks in the 1840s. And it made up about 2% of the northern population. Even the northern states will enact laws to keep African Americans in an inferior position. Hold the phone. Weren't we taught in high school that only the South had those kinds of laws? Some of you that are just recently out of high school, think back. Only the South had laws in place to keep the black people under our thumb. Wrong. The North was worse than the South. You have a lot of discrimination. They can only vote in 5 of the New England states. Some of these others, they're denied basic civil rights. They can't testify against white people in court. In Massachusetts, you cannot be an African American man and serve on the jury. A lot of the new Western states will pass laws saying that free blacks cannot immigrate to their state, and they will keep them out with extreme prejudice, as in kaboom with a gun. That you have segregation practice up north. You ever watch Good Times? You ever see that show? Anyway, they live in Chicago, and they live in the ghetto part, and it's not changed since, the industrial era. So they're still keeping people segregated. They had separate sections on public transportation if they're even allowed to use it. And they can't go into a lot of the hotels or restaurants. What's that sound like? Jump forward a little bit, about 100 years. Some kind of laws that were in place in the South in the 50s and 60s and 40s. Segregation or Jim Crow laws. There are no new concepts in history. Here's further proof. African Americans are pushed into lower paying jobs. Women usually will have to work after marriage as well because they can't survive on just one income. And they will usually do typical female jobs, servants, cooks, maids. They used African Americans as strike breakers. What's a strike breaker?
They crossed like the picket line.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like in that movie, The River. Mel Gibson. My dad actually met Sissy Spacek while she was staying at the hotel where he worked. She's about this tall. She was short. They will break the picket lines because they can't be in the trade unions. Because they are forced into a lower income bracket, their diets are not adequate. They eat whatever they can afford, sort of like now. They say you should eat healthy, but don't try to buy a couple of apples and you can buy 3 boxes of Little Debbie cakes for the same price and get 3 times as much food. So it's not a new idea. So since they're not eating well, they're more susceptible to disease. Where are they living if they're living up north? Would they be living in old tenements, crappy apartment buildings, things like that? So you're going to have lots of rats and lots of human waste, and it's going to make them more susceptible to disease. And the fact that they're not eating like they should, it's going to make them even more susceptible. By 1850, there's an 8 to 10 year shorter life expectancy for African Americans than whites. That means that you'll live to be, if you're African American, you'll live to be 35 instead of 45. Life expectancy is not really long back then. Now, even among African Americans, you're going to have divisions. It will rest on wealth and skin color. If you're light-skinned or a mulatto, then you will have more opportunity to become literate and to get a skill. Some light-skinned Africans are so light-skinned they can pass for being a white person. The darker your skin color, the less opportunity you have to become literate, to become educated. And you're going to be looked down upon by the lighter-skinned Africans. This seems kind of mean, doesn't it? But you know, people are people. It's like I've said before, everybody has to have somebody to look down their nose at, whether we want to believe that or not. Now, you ever see anybody perform in blackface? A few years ago, Ted Danson did that at Whoopi Goldberg's roast or something like that. Yeah. Ever wonder where that comes from? You're going to find out. There are these things called the minstrel shows. And they're really popular up north. And they're going to start back in the 1830s and 1840s. Basically what it is, it's a group of white actors that travel around and perform in blackface. And they perform these little scenes that mocks the African American. They show them as racial stereotypes. They show them as physically different. Like they'll have a guy dressed as a African American woman and maybe have a whole bunch of pillows back here. You know, when she walks, you know, you see her coming, and then 2 days later her behind comes through the door. You get the meaning. They're stereotypical. They portray them as stupid, as unintelligent. Is this true? No. Where do we get a lot of our agricultural techniques in the South? Who brought them with them? Slaves. They're not stupid. They have to portray them as stupid to keep white unity. Because you can't have an African American thinking that he's equal to a white man. That would just mess things up. They're really popular in northern cities. Who would be the dregs of society in the northern cities? Other than free blacks. They come in on boats every day. Immigrants. So the immigrants love these shows because they have somebody to look down their nose at. And the things of the show, they show that the African Americans can't cope with freedom. That unless somebody's telling them what to do, they don't know what. They just stand and go around in circles like, what do I do? What do I do? They show slaves as happy and content. There's some truth to this. Really, there is. I'm going to show you later. They're portrayed as strutting dandies, which portrays them as very feminine, and helpless ignoramuses. They don't know how to pick up a bucket and put water in it, something like that. And these shows will appeal to the Irish immigrants especially, and the poor elements of society. Now, you got some things going on in South Carolina. After the Depression of 1819, South Carolina's having trouble bouncing back, so they can't really get their footing. Alabama and Mississippi aren't hit quite as hard. So South Carolina has poor harvests, plus they have this horrible, horrible tariff that's been put on their goods, so they can't make any money. Now, to add insult to injury, in 1824, Congress raises the tariff. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where South Carolina becomes the headquarters of the Hotheads. They moved from Boston to South Carolina. South Carolina and other states in the South think that the tariff is unfair. It probably was. And then you've got the other problem that at this point in time, the amount or the number of African Americans outnumber the whites at a scary ratio. So what's that going to do? If you're a white plantation owner, are you putting metal bars on your windows of your wooden house? It's got to be the stupidest thing in the world. Put metal bars on your house and it's made out of wood. Oh well. Now, to make things worse, in 1822, a guy named Denmark Vesey, something like that. He's a free black carpenter. He's a pretty good carpenter. He lives in Charleston, and he decides he's going to take it upon himself to seize control of Charleston to raise awareness that black people are not getting their civil liberties. Only problem is he might have told the wrong person, and they kind of might have told somebody else for a small fee. And white officials find out about it, and they go capture him, and they execute him and the people that were going to help him. What have we learned? If you're going to take over the government, don't tell anybody. Now, because this was just a planned rebellion, it shouldn't have scared the people in South Carolina, but it does. Because if they're just thinking about it, that one day they're going to be successful and actually have a rebellion. I'd say about 80-20. You got to realize they're probably not armed that well. So, South Carolina is going to petition the government for an amendment to protect slavery. Can anybody see this happening? No, it's not going to happen. It goes against everything that the Founding Fathers wanted. For all equally created men. So they won't do this. In 1828, Congress raises the tariff again. The hotheads were hot before. By now they're boiling. So they publish protests. They write them on paper and they protest. This is where they introduce a theory called nullification. Anybody ever heard of this before? Sort of like line item veto. Kind of. Andrew Jackson's vice president wrote the document that outlined nullification. So whose side is the president and the VP on, you think? Slave owners or the not slave owners? Come on. If they're writing this document to protest what the government's doing, so are they pro-slave or anti-slave? Pro-slave, right. Under the theory of nullification, the Union is a compact between sovereign states. Let's go back to the Articles of Confederation. Under the Articles, was there a strong central government? Who had the most power? The states. They want to go back to that. Under the theory of nullification, the people have the right to nullify any law that they think exceeds the power of Congress under the Constitution. Remember, the Constitution can be interpreted in many ways. If they didn't like it, then the law will become null and void. For example, they pass a law outlawing slavery. Under this theory, they can declare that law null and void. Just like they will with secession. Congress says it's illegal, they null and void it. And they secede. Have I told this class why West Virginia is not a state? Wait, we'll get there. So in response to this, Congress can repeal that law if they make it null and void and propose a constitutional amendment giving Congress that power that has just been shot down. I know this is crazy, but it is important. If the amendment is ratified, then the state that nullified the law in the first place can either accept the decision or secede from the Union. The threat of secession does not start in 1850. It starts way back there. So then it doesn't go through. And you can just read through this. But essentially, secession will become the big weapon used by the South to get back the North for anything they don't like. And Jackson kills the bank. But what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to finish these next two, and we're going to go over the test. So Jackson doesn't like the bank, and he doesn't like paper money. He likes the whole barter system deal, and he thinks that the bank will corrupt the republic. Was he right? Yeah, sort of. He wants to reform the old banking system, but a guy named Nicholas Biddle and Andrew Jackson are going to go head to head on many occasions. Biddle doesn't want to give up any power of the bank. He does himself the bank. Nicholas Biddle. So he doesn't want to give up his power. In 1832, he applies for a renewal of the charter, and Jackson does not allow it to happen. Congress passes it, Jackson will veto it, and Congress tries to override the veto. So to cripple the bank, Jackson takes all the money out of the banks and gives it to smaller banks, state banks, instead of the federal bank. And this violates federal law, so he's a criminal. Show me a president that's not, on some aspect, a criminal. So the money goes into those state banks, and to get back at Jackson, Biddle will create, and it doesn't really happen, a financial panic in 1833, so he'll have to put the money back in there, but Jackson doesn't play into that. So the bank charter expires in 1836, and it won't be renewed for a while. So we're going to stop there.